I have 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody being here this morning for the Main Street Monday. Anyway, we're excited today. There were 35 or so of us that went to the National Main Street Conference in Philadelphia. It was a great turnout by the Kansas group, as always. It was a great conference, and we were super excited that there were four of us from Kansas who presented at different sessions during that time. And one of those is going to talk to us today about her session. And we appreciate Leslie filling in at the last minute. So Leslie Bishop is the director of Salina Downtown Incorporated. Leslie, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about your session.
This is going to be, I hope you don't mind, Scott, that I'll go ahead and speak to what I shared, but my presentation was really geared to new directors. For those that may not know, when I started working with SDI, I started in March of 21, and then in May of 21, the former director resigned. And so I was pretty much on my own. Had a really good, a board of directors that were very supportive, but kind of not really in the know of what has had and had not been going on in the office. And so, as far as what I spoke to was, I chose four categories that really spoke to me. One was the need or the anxiety to say yes, but learn to say no, effective communication, um, being yourself. And here I am. I forgot then just navigating the challenges of what it means to be a director. So my first one was when I first started in this role, I was promoted in October of 21. It was clear that Main Street downtown Salina had not been serviced very well, if you will. That kind of sounds kind of naughty, but you know what I mean. And so I was saying yes to things that I didn't really quite understand or maybe didn't align with my personality. And so I learned quickly that it was okay to say no, especially if I didn't have the answer. And then the other thing was, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it needs to continue to be done that way. And the example I gave in this was downtown Salina. Prior to the redevelopment, there were constant pub crawls, and it ended up being a money loser for a lot of the bars, because in reality we have four true bars in downtown Salina, and so some of the bar owners would lose money because they couldn't keep track of who had a wristband and who didn't. So I said no to the pub crawl, but let's reinvent it. And so we started a hot cider, hot cocoa crawl, which allowed for us to be able to include our downtown businesses, retail businesses, and our downtown bars. And that has been going on now 4 years. So just because it's always been done a certain way doesn't mean that you can't reinvent it and change it up or completely not do it at all. So we don't really do pub crawls at all anymore. So I encouraged the audience. I had 96 in my presentation. A lot of them were brand new. Many that I met at the beginning had literally been on the job for anywhere from a week to a month. So I really encouraged the audience to, to rely on their instinct and know what would work, and maybe reevaluate some of the programming that was going on in their particular downtown. It worked well for us. The first year we had lots of people asking where our pub crawls were, but now we just don't have that. And a lot of the bars, because we have so few bars, a lot of them do their own thing now. The other was communicating effectively. My goal for myself was to, a lot of our relationships in downtown were broken. A lot of key stakeholders, those relationships had been broken or severed altogether. So I spent a lot of time rebuilding relationships with downtown merchants, um, the city of Salina, the chamber, a lot of groups that we do business with. And my example on this was just to be yourself, that retail people really can see through pretense. And so and at my age, I couldn't pretend to be someone I wasn't because I would forget. So I really strive to encourage the audience to really just be true to who they are, both professionally and personally. Um, and then, of course, you adapt yourself, you read the room and adapt yourself to the audience. But I found my example was a downtown business owner who I had been told was really mean. Um, and I walked into her business, and she absolutely had no time for me, and pretty much just said, "I don't have time for you," to my face multiple times. And then when I got new rack cards for downtown, I took them to her business, and Andrea said, "I don't have time for you, and I have no room for those on my counter." So, but I kept showing up, and that was what I told the audience, to just keep showing up to those merchants that um, maybe hadn't been believing in what Salina Downtown had been doing or not doing. They lost faith in the office. They had lost, didn't know where their BID dues were going. So I just kept showing up. And finally, Andrea had time for me. And then finally, Andrea came to my office and um, told me that she was going to be selling her business. Her husband had passed away, but she was really kind of sad about it because she was hoping she could work with me. So those were wins. And it took about a year and a half to kind of get those merchants that had been neglected kind of on board. And I'm happy to say that, we all have that one or two merchants that are grumbly, but they talk to me today, and that was a real win. And the other thing was just those challenging moments when I had zero training in what my role was. While like I had mentioned, the board was um, engaged, but they didn't really know what wasn't happening. And so I made it very clear. I showed up where I needed to be. We were not being represented at tourism meetings. We were not being represented at city commission meetings. We were not being represented at area organizations where directors were meeting. So I just kept showing up, and I kept asking the same questions, even if they needed to be repeated. And I found that I had lots of support from those leaders in the community. Um, and it really helped me to feel like I was a part of something. And it was huge to repair those relationships. But one of the things that we weren't doing a very good job of was being represented at our city commission meetings. And we had an event downtown that was going to require Santa Fe, which is our main drag, to be closed. And we have a first reading and a second reading, and I broke all protocol and stood up during the second reading because I had finally heard from downtown merchants about why was Santa Fe going to be closed on a Saturday. And needless to say, the city manager walked out angry. My This particular agenda item had to be moved to the end, and all the powers that be came strolling into the building. But the point is, I stood up for my businesses because they were concerned that downtown Salina on a Saturday, the bread and butter day, was going to be closed at 1 o'clock. And so the good news is that particular event, now that Santa Fe isn't closed. I mean, it was that year, but that was the other thing I really encouraged the audience to do, was to stand up for what you believed in and work for who you're working for. And you're working for your local businesses in downtown, whatever downtown you're representing. And then the other is that downtown directors, on the good days, the bad days, we're exhausted, we're overworked, we're underappreciated, we're underpaid, all those things. But at the end of the day, getting those validations of, wow, downtown Salina is not what it used to be 4 or 5 years ago. There's no parking in downtown Salina on Santa Fe, and to which I reply now, isn't that great? Because that's what we want. Um, Restaurants are full, and people are coming downtown as a gathering space. And so I really try to stress the point that downtown Main Street directors are just magic. I mean, we create an environment for our community where people want to gather and be a part of um, the community. And I think many of us have read a lot about the neglect of, people feeling isolated and alone. And our goal is for downtown Salina to be a gathering spot, and everyone is welcome. And and even though the days can be long, and as we're all gearing up to the late spring, early summer events, I do find that I'm really motivated to come into the office the next day. And I also stress the importance of being in communication with directors within their state. Um, and that's what I have found very valuable this last year and a half to 2 years, where the directors in Kansas, we communicate very regularly, and we can, throw ideas off of each other, and there's a bond that I feel now, for me personally, that is really enriching because I learned so much from other directors, no matter the size of the community. And I did have a young man come up to me after my presentation and ask, when he had talked about how he had been in a college course and his professor had told him that he could not say that he was an expert at something until he had mastered it. And he wanted to know when I felt like I was the expert. And I didn't, I chuckled and told him I didn't mean to be flip, but if that was what his goal was to be the expert, that he would burn out and he would not want to be, he won't survive. I will never be the expert at what I'm doing. I have a good team in my office. I have a very engaged board, but I will never be the expert because you have to pivot and navigate every day. We can all come in and think our Monday is going to look like a certain way, and it doesn't fall out. I mean, just this weekend we had somebody thought it was fun to start an umbrella on fire in downtown Salina, and so that was the first thing I had to deal with this morning. So I really spoke to just the importance of just really being yourself, not pretending to be someone you're not, okay with changing things up, um, speaking up for who you are working for, and then just really celebrate the challenge, the successes that we make, because I think we can all say that even on the toughest day, when we get that one phone call or that one walk-in person coming in to say, gosh, I love everything that you're doing, makes all the headaches, all the long nights, all the early mornings worth it. And I hope it resonated with some of the people in the room. And like I said, it was certainly directed at new directors a year into this process. Um, so that's my presentation in a nutshell.
Leslie, that's awesome. And I think a lot of what you said resonates with a director of any experience level or any time that they've been in the position. It's hard to say no, and it's hard to really carefully analyze what's working and what's not, and getting rid of those things that aren't working. And so I heard a lot of positive comments about your session in Philadelphia, and so it resonated with a lot of people of different experience levels.
Well, thank you. I also want to give a shout out to Wayne and Sarah, and there's, I can't remember who the third, I think it was Kylie. Anyway, came into my session right before I started to give me a thumbs up and a pat on the back and encouragement. So that was really terrific. But it was fun to present, and yeah. So and I appreciated Tasha Sams with Main Street America reaching out to me. It was an honor.
That's great. Does anybody have questions for Leslie? Any input that you want to share, or takeaways, or yes, this was great, or I want to add to this, or anything?
I do. Leslie, I would love if you don't mind just summarizing the process of registering and not exact, but just a guideline of deadlines and what you were given to prepare and just a little bit of in case we wanted to do it next year.
Yeah. So I was Main Street America sent me out like an outline, um, and what it was that, like my experience in public speaking. I had to break down my learning objectives, and so I picked the four that spoke to me the loudest at the time. There's a zillion, we all know there are. And on each of those learning objectives, I wrote out why it was important to me, and then I wrote an example that I gave to, like, not saying yes to the pub crawl, and standing up for the downtown merchants when there was an event coming downtown, communicating effectively. Gave examples on all of those, and then submitted that, and then they reached back out to me, and then they gave me a template that I had to follow to create my presentation. I shared my presentation, but they weren't going to upload it, and then I just brought it with me to Philadelphia, and I did the 45-minute crash course, I think is what it is. And I felt like that was plenty long. I spoke for 40, so then had about 5 minutes of question and answer. And then a few people stayed after, and I got to talk to them. The one thing I did make a point of doing right before I even started was, and I couldn't keep up because everybody started coming in, but I tried to introduce myself to everyone that came in early and get an idea of where they were from and how long they've been in the job. And then I did ask everyone to move to the front because everybody was sitting in the back. But it was a really easy process. And then there was a Zoom webinar, I guess, of just, protocol and things to stay away from, what Main Street expected. Like it couldn't be a sales pitch. I couldn't sell anything, which I wouldn't have done anyhow. But yeah, so it was really simple. And then they gave me my room assignment where I needed to be. And we tracked, April ran the PowerPoint for me, and we tracked how many people were in the room, and then I was done. And I was really grateful that it was on Monday because then I was over for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Main Street America does a really good job of sending out information about the call for proposals, and they'll do that in the, I don't remember what the time frame is, if it's in the fall or if it's in early 2026 for the conference in Tulsa. But it's once you get that email, and we'll make sure and share that with everybody in the future. It's a pretty simple process to present your proposal for a session. And then once they accept it, yeah, like Leslie said, they have a video to help you understand what to expect, and they give you templates for your presentation to use, and they've got it refined pretty well. So wouldn't you say, Leslie?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first, Casey can speak to this. I know he has presented, and you too, Scott, have presented several times, but for a first timer, I did not feel intimidated. It didn't feel overwhelming, and I can kind of go there. I can get really up in there and think too big. I probably had too much time to think about it. Um, and the other thing I would suggest too is practice with people, both, like I shared it with my board of directors, I shared it with a group of women that I meet with weekly, shared it with people that I associate with, my presentation, and I got lots of really great feedback. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in doing this to really make sure you're sharing it with a rounded group of people.
That's good advice, Leslie, to always share it with other people and not just be reading it to practice or something. So,
And I would add that the Main Street group, and I hope people can. I mean, they're very forgiving. I mean, I kind of got ahead of myself in my presentation and had to backtrack, um, and lots of nodding of the heads. I mean, we're all in this together. There's no right way to do it. And if I ever were to present on something like this again, I mean, there would be 4 new key objectives that I could bring up that speak to me. But it was a great experience for me.
That's great. Any other questions for Leslie or about the process of speaking and presenting at the national conference?
I'll just add, Scott, if somebody has a topic and they want to bounce it off of us as Kansas Main Street staff, would this be something good? We'd be happy to, advise or take a look at an outline or whatever. So don't be afraid to use us as a resource also.
We would certainly be more than happy to help in that area. It'd be great to have, 8, 10 people from Kansas speaking at these conferences in the future.
So may I even ask now, we've got this flags of Geary County that we've started, or I can catch you later, or I can ask, I feel like it's a fundraiser for Main Street. And I don't know if anybody knows about it or if they think it's a good idea, or should I catch you later and bounce this off you later? But I thought about presenting that next year.
We'd be glad to help you with that, Terry.
Okay,
So,
I'll follow up with y'all later then.
sure.
Okay.
I have a question real quick, and maybe Casey, you can answer this too. Do we ever find out, like, how we're supposed to give an evaluation of the sessions that we went to? Does Main Street ever share the good, the bad, and the ugly with you?
Usually have to request that information. I think one of the things that I do for presentations is include a Google form that I'll throw a QR code up for questions and comments, and then different types of presentations over the years. One thing to Terry and anybody looking to present that I think is smart that Main Street started doing over the past 5 years is have is this a beginner, intermediate, or expert level sort of presentation because there are people that get real scared when I start talking about a pro forma. But all ask nationals, and they years ago would share certain tidbits, but over the past few years, I've just done my own form, and then people are pretty good at providing feedback. And then I'm sure, Leslie, you ran into this. People will run into you afterwards and say, hey, I've got 800 questions for you. Can you hold still for a minute? And then run through all that. And that's a good indicator that they were engaged with whatever your commentary was.
Casey, when you said you provided your own form, you mean, did you pass it out during the class and get it back then? Or what did you do with that, with your own form?
I just use a Google form. So within Google, they have a forms set up, and I had some basic collection of information and open paragraph sort of commentary allowance. So then I think I had like 25 people that had different questions or commentary, and that way I can collect it all, because trying to juggle that during conference is difficult, and it allows me to check those people off when they have very specific questions. Like somebody from Indiana had a very pointed piece of a very pointed question about legislation that was Upper Story RHID specific. So I could send her the actual legislative language that was used. And some people had just vernacular questions. We talked about our glossary of terms for development, and a lot of people wanted that. So as they wanted something, I like to collect things in that digital format as opposed to business cards, because those can get lost during the conference.
Excellent points, Casey. And some speakers, and I'll probably do this at future conferences, is include a QR code for my own survey to find out what worked and what didn't, even if it's just 4 or 5 questions. Because people, if they scan a QR code, they don't want 20 questions to evaluate on the spot. But if you give them a few pointed questions, you can get some good feedback that way. Other questions, comments? Well, I think when the call for proposals comes out from Main Street America for the Tulsa conference in 2026, we'll schedule a Main Street Monday, and we'll talk about this and help answer questions. And people like Casey, Leslie, myself that have spoken at the national conference before can give some perspective on how to present your session and hopefully be selected. So any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a question. It doesn't relate to this, but I was just curious to know if anybody on the call is involved with TIAC in their area, the Travel Industry Association of Kansas.
Yes, ma'am, I am. This is Jill.
Thanks, Jill. I'm gonna get involved with it. Are you gonna go to the Education Day in Manhattan or in Kansas City here in June?
No, because it's on the same day as something else I have. So,
Okay. But have you enjoyed it? Have you learned a lot?
In all honesty,
Yeah.
it's what you put into it, I guess, and it's more of the networking, and idea sharing. But now, like right now, I will say that the biggest part of it is because I'm in that 2-hour range of World Cup. So that's been delightful. The work that they did for to save Sunflower Summer was good. So they have reduced their number of days, I believe, for their October conference based off of feedback. But
Yeah. Thank you. And then I'm gonna get involved in the North Central Kansas travel tourism thing too. So just to be a
So,
part of all of it.
yeah, I'm with Northeast Kansas. We have a really great group. There's probably, and Kylie is our president.
Wow.
Our president is amazing.
Leslie, I'm
figured
North
out.
Central, and I like going to the North Central meetings a lot. They often spill over, not just tourism, but a lot of people are in positions like mine where we're Chamber, Main Street, and Convention and Visitors Bureau. So a lot of times we'll talk about partnerships. Who are you collaborating with? I find them really useful.
Oh, great. Hey, I'm going to
And
go to.
I met Jill at TIAC, so I'll always have
Mhm.
an affinity for TIAC.
Thanks, Wayne.
I have two questions. Oh, when it's time. Did we
I
finish
was just
that
gonna
topic?
say, I'm driving, so it took me a second to figure out how to unmute. But I am a board member for TIAC, and I am the co-chair of the Northeast Kansas Tourism Region. So if people have questions about that, I can try to help.
So my two questions, in the past, I'm not sure who mentioned this, but ways, you know, if we know that an event is coming to our community, or I can even mention the World Cup event, but if we know that events are coming to our community, like the 6A tennis boys championship or something coming in Junction City, what are some ideas that people have to try to capture, to find out who's coming, and then what to send out to promote things going on in the downtown district? So if they're coming in for a collegiate national fishing tournament at Milford Lake, or they're coming in, so what methods is everybody using to find out who's coming, and to say, hey, while you're here, consider coming downtown? And same with World Cup.
I guess that my first question would be, who is the partnering organization that's bringing them in? So if it's your chamber, they should have some type of idea. If it's like a different organization, you could reach out to them, provide marketing to them. But the other thing is find their socials and then tag their socials is the biggest thing.
Thank you. I'm taking notes. Thank you.
And in the chat, I wanted to mention that Linnell Schubert in Waukene would be a resource for TIAC questions and their involvement in tourism, as is Sarah Werner in Winfield. So those two are also involved and would be glad to answer questions you have. Casey has a question about federal and department legislation.
So I know everything is fluid at the federal level, but feedback that I'm getting from some folks that I know that work with other legislators in DC indicate that CDBG, rural development, USDA, and SBA as departments, not as programs, are on the chopping block. Which would take out the programs as well. Are you hearing some of the same things, or is that just bluster at this point?
A great question, Casey. Last week, the Main Street America Government Relations team, Kelly and Michael, had a call with coordinating programs and review the president's budget. They are, as you know, are doing a great job of trying to keep everybody up to date, and they do a good job of understanding where things are at. The key point that they made was that this budget is identical to what he presented his first term in office, and those things survived at that time. They acknowledge, and I think we all realize that this is a different administration and a different approach than the first time. That's really all they could say. They don't expect these things to be cut when it gets right down to it, but they emphasize, and we will always emphasize, call your congressional leaders and your congressional delegation, the two Kansas senators, and whoever your congressperson is in your area. Call them and let them know that you don't want those programs cut. And internally with CDBG, we're not getting any indication that things will be cut right now. In fact, if CDBG was eliminated on the federal level today, the way I understand it, they have enough resources within the state program to continue doing some things, but it obviously would change in the future. It would impact it significantly if they cut it from the federal level. But there are just a lot of questions that we all have. And as the government relations team at Main Street America, gives us any updates that are relevant and appropriate to share, we'll certainly do that when we can.
I can add that we had applied for the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grant Makers Program, and we were receiving emails that it was moving forward. And then I think a few days ago, we got one that was terminated. So that's that's been terminated.
Yeah, we did submission for greenhouse reduction, and that still exists, but it's been frozen because they decided to use an investigative model through the FBI to freeze all the funding. But for a lot of us, smaller communities, CDBG is a huge program that does a lot of infrastructure development, rural development through USDA. There are tons of different programs, especially for communities under 5,000. So it's something that will, I think any information that you have, Scott, that you can forward out so that we can communicate with elected officials would be to everybody's benefit. I think when we had looked at this during the first administration of this current leadership group, somebody did an analysis that said if you were a community under 6,000 people, you wouldn't be able to survive without these different programs in place from an infrastructure perspective. So just something that we're going to have to keep some tabs on, not to get political, but at least to inform the people around us so that we know how to adjust.
Casey and Scott, I'll jump in and add that there's very similar concerns about the historic preservation program as a whole. We were as KMS staff at the Historic Preservation Conference, and as of right now, our state program is unable to draw down funds from fiscal year 2025 programs. And basically that drawdown from the National Park Service is how they pay about half of SHPO's staff. So there's concern about the federal tax credit as a whole, and also just the ability for state preservation programs to continue to operate without that federal funding, because it's basically the state doing preservation work for the federal government. And just to clarify, that money doesn't even come from tax dollars. That comes from offshore oil leases. So, but they went to do a drawdown here a week or two ago, and there's no money there. So there's some question, like many state SHPO offices will be laying people off starting in June or July if something doesn't change with that. So it's kind of coming from all fronts, just to let you know. And I know a lot of us have historic districts or potential historic districts in our downtowns, and so this could be an issue. Scott, any thoughts on that? Or
no, we will, like Robert said, that information about the Historic Preservation Fund and other issues with the SHPO office just came out late last week at the preservation conference. I think that was Friday even is when that was discussed.
That's when they brought it up. They knew
right
at the beginning of the week already, but yeah.
But we will, and then the Main Street America advocacy team, their meeting was Wednesday. So we'll keep you all apprised of what's going on. But I think the common theme in all these meetings that we've had about this is to contact your congressional leaders and let them know how important these programs are and specifically how your community has used them, if you have.
They also gave us some documents that kind of outline the funding, and Scott, I suppose we could ask for a digital copy of that and maybe distribute it to our communities as well. So
Yeah, we'll request some. There weren't handouts or digital copies last week at the preservation conference at any of the sessions I went to, but we'll be trying to get those and share those when we can.
I was specifically thinking the like preservation by the numbers kind of thing that they had the last
Right.
day. It'd be good to get that into hands of directors who are familiar with how the preservation program works and can lobby a little as well. So,
Right. One of the things that was discussed last week was that how much congressional leaders appreciate historic preservation and successful projects. They mentioned that several times in the session. So make those calls, send emails, whatever you can do to let them know how important those things are to our communities would be helpful. Other questions, comments, thoughts? All right. Well, just a heads up, our next Main Street Monday is June 9th at 10 a.m. And then we'll have quarterly training in Seneca, June 24th and 25th. So we're looking forward to that as well. The Main Street Monday on June 9th will feature Lynn Falk. She's with Retail Works. She's been a consultant with Main Street America for years. And I think she'll have some good information to share. And we may plug Lynn into future trainings in 2026. But any other questions, comments? If not,
I'll just ask Kylie, are we good to, I know Debbie's not on the call that I see today. Are we good to go as far as hotel rooms, that block, Kylie?
Yeah, I think Debbie actually took care of that. So we do have, I believe there's a block reserved at it's pronounced Altenhofen Inn and Suites in Seneca. We also do have another hotel in Seneca called the Starlight Motel. It's kind of got Route 66 vibes. If you're looking for other things, we do also have a few downtown lofts that are available as Airbnbs if somebody's looking for something different. So, I think Debbie said that block, the deadline is fairly early to get the extra rate. So I don't know when you all will send that out, but I guess.
actually today.
Oh, okay.
That
So
information is going today.
pay attention to your emails, people.
Yes.
And I do know that you have to call in to get the reduced rate. That was something Debbie had mentioned to me. So
Oh,
I
Sorry.
actually have to talk to somebody.
yeah.
Yep. Look for that email today. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great week and holler if you have questions or need help with anything. We'll see you soon.